at work, you may want to reach out to Dr. Spencer. She can be found on Facebook under Dr. Lamar Renee Spencer. And also, I should shout out my partner, Romane. Romane also helps with relationships and other issues that people may have. I know it's a difficult time in this country. We still haven't totally recovered from the COVID crisis. And now they're talking about monkeypox and more vaccines and more people becoming infected. And, the economy, we're clearly in a recession. The government doesn't want to just come out and say it, but something's going on because things are not getting any better. Prices at the pump, only a slight improvement from what they were a few weeks ago. So there's a lot of stress in people's lives. So if you're having trouble coping with that stress, you need to reach out to either my partner, Romane, or Dr. Spencer. And Romane can be found on Facebook under The Real Romane. And she may be joining us today via phone from her location. But anyway, Renee, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you on.
Thank you.
So, you and I and Roman as well had talked about this particular subject maybe a week or so ago.
Mm-hmm.
Because I saw a documentary and I thought it was so important that we shed some light on this organization that these two women have formed. They formed an organization called Black and Missing Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And it did that because each year, 460,000 children are reported missing. Let me say that again. Each year, 460,000 children, and we're just talking in this country, are reported missing. So if you think about it, that's roughly maybe 3% of the population just gone.
Mm-hmm.
And if you kind of widen that out into, you talk about, internal trafficking of women and children, that number goes up as high as 600,000 to 800,000. And in terms of just internal trafficking, right? They say that number can reach into the millions, 2 to 4 million. 50% of those are children. Now, what struck me is the fact that Black people, and we're sometimes referred to as African Americans, I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but for us, we make up approximately 13% of the U.S. population, which hasn't changed much, over the past, I guess, maybe 6 or 7 decades. But again, we're 13% of the population, but 40% of the children that are missing are Black and brown. So we are overrepresented, in terms of the missing. Underrepresented in terms of population, but in terms of missing, we make up nearly the vast majority. And the sad part is, the troubling part is that no one apparently is looking for our children. And it has a lot to do with, I guess, our response to our children being reported missing. Law enforcement also plays a role. With Black and brown children, apparently what happens is if a Black or brown child is missing, the parents make the initial report to the police. Well, typically what is happening in the law enforcement community is that the police, they initially rule this incident as a runaway. And when they do that, not enough resources or adequate resources are committed to finding these children. Well, they'll run away, they'll come back home. In those first hours, it is crucial that you begin to look for these children. As hours, days, and weeks pass, it is almost impossible. I mean, some of these sex trafficking rings, they're quite complex. They have systems set up so that, they'll have, I guess, locations throughout the country or maybe throughout the world where they can stash these women, hide them in plain sight, or these young girls in plain sight. No one will know that they're there. So, it is important that when this report is made, that the police immediately begin to search for these children. Get out BOLO, which BOLO is be on the lookout. If you're traveling along the interstate system in this country, you see these billboards where you see, the silver alert, the amber alert. Sadly, for children of color, they don't do that very much. So there are two women, and I don't have their names in front of me. They formed the Black and Missing Foundation, and they are at the forefront of getting this information out there. And they have partnered with the television show PD Live, so that when a child is reported missing, we'll get their faces onto television. So if someone sees these children, notifications can be made, and we can kind of reverse this trend. And, Renee, you and I are both parents. We both have daughters.
Mhm.
So, this is sort of scary when you think about it. I mean, one day you get up with your child, send them off to school, and then they don't come back.
Mhm.
You contact the school says, well, we think she got on the school bus. You think, you speak to the bus driver, and no, she didn't make the school bus. And then the search goes from there. And then you like to think that if necessary, you call the police. You like to think that the police are going to commit adequate resources to finding your child. And, I guess about maybe 2 years ago, there was a young woman that, I don't know if I think the story goes, she left with her boyfriend. Her name was Gabby Patina. You remember that story, Renee?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. Police all throughout the country were trying to locate this girl. And, the sad part is they did find her. She was in an altercation with her then boyfriend. And the police kind of dropped the ball on that one. If you see two people who are in a domestic relationship and you see them involved in some sort of altercation, I mean, in most states, it is a must arrest policy. You have to arrest the person who has visible injury or the primary aggressor. In this case, they said, well, you know what, these are just kids. We'll give them a good talking to and send them on their way. Well, within the weeks that followed, we found this young lady's body was discovered. But when it comes to Black and brown children, it's a whole different ballgame. And, Renee, you being a life counselor, right, or life coach, you might have to deal with some of these parents who are, grieving the loss of a child, or just the stress of having a child missing. Right? I can't even imagine what that's like. What advice would you give them?
Right. So let me tell you, I actually am I echoing?
Yes,
No, a little bit, yeah.
Is it me?
it's you.
Yeah, Terry said yes.
Okay, I don't hear it
All right,
anymore.
you better.
He
Okay.
said, yeah.
And I'm sorry, I had so many things open. I couldn't I couldn't figure out how to close all these things. But I had a parent call me about a month ago. Her daughter was missing out of Chicago, and the police didn't do anything. Nothing. And come to find out, she spent the night at her friend's house and her brother shot her in the face. And like she said, she's been mourning this for about 2 years because the police, again, are doing nothing. But let me just give you a personal story how you could be the coach, but you need coaching as well. So when my daughter was about 1.5, she, of course, went to daycare. I get a call at about 4:30. I was going to take her to the circus, and the call said, "I'm sorry, it was Spencer, but your daughter has been taken out of the school, and we just called the state troopers." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" Well, what happened was her father and I, and I'm very transparent, just went to court for custody, and so it was the end of the day, and he took her out of the school. And so when I finally got to the school, the police were there. It took them 45 minutes to get to the school.
Right.
And when I tell you they did nothing, and you know what they told me? Because I thought they was going to send out an Amber Alert because I had the paperwork, but it hadn't been typed by the stenographer until it was going to be typed Monday. But they told me that oftentimes kids are not really missing. Paperwork could get crossed, or you can have paperwork that's not updated when it comes to custody. And they really didn't want to get involved because they were afraid they were going to get sued. So you're right. The first 48 hours was extremely difficult. And let me tell you, the most difficult part is when you can hear your child saying, hey, mommy, I'm okay, like taunting you. That was the worst. And you have to kind of put on a brave face because at the time I was going to my cousin's high school graduation. But meanwhile, my parents and everyone is on the phone because we're calling different police departments in different states. My father is a Mason. He called the police in Philadelphia. He was in, going to Philly. We called the ones in South Jersey because we're thinking he has to go that route. But when I tell you nothing, but it was a white kid that was missing. And you know what they did? Put up the Amber Alerts. Our phones were going off, but not for mine. And let me tell you, sometimes even just being a person of color, it doesn't matter how many resources you could actually, have. I thought I had a lot of resources, but they didn't want to get involved. Money can't even get you out of it. And you don't know, again, where your child is. And the worst thing you can think of is what our parents told us as a kid. You're going to be in a ditch, and you're thinking all of these things. But let me tell you, that first 48 hours, I was frantic. I didn't know what was going on. And still to this day, it has made me more afraid. And she's 14. I always have her right by my side. I don't want to spend the night. I don't want any of these things because of that one situation.
I'll tell you something. For Black and brown people in this country, we have been the victims so many times. There's a legacy of our children being taken from us.
Mm-hmm.
On the plantations, your children could be sold. Just one day they're there, the next day they're gone. And during that time, we had no way, just like now, no way of knowing where our child was sent, what plantation, what state, what conditions are they living under? Were they taken to, there's an expression, sold down the river. Yeah. And that expression refers to being sent down, I guess to Mississippi, to places like New Orleans in, Louisiana, where the working conditions were extremely harsh. Mm-hmm. So, that expression kind of grew out of that activity being sold down the river. So for us having that legacy of having our children, literally snatched out of our arms, you would think that we would be more vigilant, that we would be more understanding in terms of the loss of a child, that we would, of course, be more active and more proactive in finding our child, being vigilant. If you see something, say something, right? But the sad part is, and you have to think that a lot of these young girls that are missing, probably a percentage of those young ladies are being abducted and placed into sex trafficking rings.
Yes.
And, the sad part is, and it's also, it makes you so angry that it is not some creepy Caucasian man, in a van hanging out in the middle of a black community or brown community looking to abduct these girls. You know that it is someone who blends right into the fabric of the community.
Yes.
In other words, it is us, capturing us. And that goes back to the beginning of the triangle slave trade. For Europeans who came to Africa to collect Africans, they could not venture off the beach. Why? Because they did not have the natural immunity against malaria. So they stayed on the beach and waited. They sent black men into the interior to capture other black men and women and bring them to the beach, to the slavers. And now you have the same sort of activity. You have young black men going into the interior of the hood, taking these young black women and bringing them to, a life of slavery. Sex
Right.
slavery this time.
But let me just say one thing, Ron. You're right. So a few years ago, my friend's daughter came home for college. She and her sister went out. And so this was in the Maryland area. And so and they went to like a club. So her sister was dancing, but she was fairly close. She's sitting down, and this woman came up to her and was trying to distract her. Come to find out, they were a part of a ring. And then moving forward, even sometimes it's not just men, it could be children, or like I just gave an example, women. So I always told my daughter, and I tell people when we will go to the store, thank you so very much, but she cannot accept candies, money, anything. And the reason why is because every time we would go somewhere, someone would want to give her $1, someone want to give her something. And I know there's times where they just want to be, nice. But I had to train her not to accept things because we had a kid who was trying to give her candy. But come to find out, adults were training children to abduct other children. And so I also want to say that even for parents, when you go to the stores, be mindful of your exits in the stores. Be mindful of those four ways and the jewelry displays and all of those things. I learned at an early age to be careful because my father was in the military and he always told me to look out for that. But yes, because we can go to the store, and especially when you have small children or any other child, you're distracted because you're looking at the clothes, the jewelry. Meanwhile, someone has taken your child out of the store and you don't even realize it because there are so many different exits to go out. So I started just taking my daughter and just holding her hand because she was playing, and next thing you know, she was under the clothes, but I was frantic. And we have to be mindful of those things too. You're right, they blend in, these people. Yes, they do.
Yeah, it is sad that we are preying upon one another.
Yeah.
And what you described, the activity of giving a child $1 or 50 cents. That was common in my generation.
Mm-hmm.
For if a kid, showed some aptitude and was smart, an adult will give them $1, 50 cents, something like that. This is encouragement. Now, it's we live in a world where you have to question, why are you giving my child this? And we have to be so vigilant in this country.
Mm-hmm.
On so many levels, because if it's not a child abduction, you have situations like what happened in Buffalo, in the supermarket. 10 black people shot down, innocent black people who only went shopping. when you have situations like that, when you have gun violence on the increase and things of that nature, excuse me, you have to be extremely vigilant. And with our children, we bear some of the brunt
Mm-hmm.
or of the responsibility for not being more vigilant.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we as parents have to be vocal. We have to let the local, state, and national authorities know that, listen, our children are just as important to us as any other child. And we, as taxpayers in this country, as citizens of this country, we deserve equal treatment under the law. And, that's supposed to be guaranteed. It's supposed to be a constitutional right that is guaranteed to us, but it's not something that's happening. So we need to be more vocal. And, what I'd like to do is I'd like to open up the phone lines, because there are probably some people right now who are listening who may know of someone, in fact, it may be their child that's missing. Or it doesn't have to be a child, could be, someone with dementia, some other um, degenerative illness that just wandered off. It could be a husband, it could be a mother, right, who is missing. So, we need to share our platforms to get the information out there. And for us in the Black community, we have resources right at our fingertips. We have access to social media. Instead of sending around some of these really silly things that we do send around, we could be sending around information related to missing and exploited children.
Yes.
We get their faces out there. So if someone sees a child or sees some activity that doesn't look right, we can make notification. But this is something we need to do. So I'm going to open up the phone lines. And if you have some information you want to share about a loved one that is missing, or maybe someone in your community or a family member that, is trying to find a child or family member, give us a call. The number is 888-304-4401. Again, 888-304-4401. So, I just think that it is so important that we get this information out there. If the federal government, the state government, local government won't do it for us, we have to do it for ourselves. And that's what I find so great about this organization, Black and Missing. This is just two women who said, one was in law enforcement. I think the other was actually when a child was missing, I believe, for a period of time. And they got together and they are so dedicated to getting this information out there. And they're, like I said, they're partnering with so many different organizations to get the faces onto screens, to get, information on billboards, along the highways, so that our children, it's one thing to be reported missing, it's another thing to be forgotten. And we can never forget our children. We have to make sure that they are getting the same amount of resources that you dedicate for a Caucasian child. The same needs to be done for Black and brown children. These are American children. This is, the future of this country, the future of this nation. We need to dedicate the necessary resources. And, as it relates to sex trafficking in this country, this is supposed to be the richest country on the planet. How is this happening? And why aren't we more aggressive in, breaking up these sex rings, prosecuting people? And probably the real reason that we're not more aggressive, if you do the research, and I'm not just talking about the low-level guys who go out and I guess we'll call them recruiters who go out and abduct these women and young girls. There's probably these very advanced sort of rings, and it's probably some of the clientele, maybe rich and powerful people. So maybe the government, in this instance, isn't really interested in looking into it. I mean, let's be realistic now. Wasn't Epstein, right?
Mm-hmm.
They say he died or committed suicide in prison. That's doubtful. But wasn't he running a sex ring for wealthy and powerful people. And these were young girls that were lured into these illicit acts, with older men. I think the one of the crown princes was also asked questions about his involvement in, with Jeffrey Epstein. So it could be that, there are rich and powerful people involved, and that's why we're not doing enough to stop this sort of thing. So I guess it's incumbent upon us to go out and be vigilant and to make demands of our government. Like, listen, you need to do everything you can do, and we need to partner with you to make sure that this cycle is broken. Because, I looked it up. So for 2021, and this is the most recent statistics, there are 521,705 people reported missing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge number. That's the population of some states in this country missing. And who's looking for them? And for that same time period, for folks under 18, 138,320. That's an entire small city of people just vanished. I mean, realistically, for the most part, they're probably right here in this country. But, we're not really looking for them. And of course, they probably have, I guess I'll call them safe houses set up, where they have these women where the activity seems normal. But if you look a little closer, you probably see cars coming and going all night long.
Right.
You know what I mean? So something's going on. And, for us in the Black community, they got this no snitching policy.
Mm-hmm.
We just kind of look the other way. We just kind of mind our business. But these are our children.
Mm-hmm.
We can't expect the government to do for us what we will not do for ourselves.
Right.
So we got to be more involved, on so many levels.
Yeah. And, just to kind of prepare for this, right? So I was looking it up as well. And as the FBI and Homeland Security mentioned in the article that they printed in CNN, they said that they really don't know what the numbers are. And the reason why they don't know where the numbers are and where the kids are really based accurately is because they get the information from the police departments in the states. So because of resources, or because, like we were just saying, they just don't care, it could be a lot more kids. But they were reporting, since we're talking about this, Black and brown kids. But what about interracial kids? And those are like the numbers that they really don't have either accurately. And then Latino, because let's think about it, right? You know how some people say, well, I'm Dominican, I'm Puerto Rican, but they're dark skinned and their kids can really be missing, but they are not really a part of or accurately counted for. And like I said, the FBI or Homeland Security system, because they'll say, they've been labeled as non-Black or brown. So that's another thing as well.
Well, I think what it is the initial reporting.
Mm-hmm.
Because, of course, about every police department in the country has to report annually to the FBI their crime statistics. But if those statistics are not, compiled accurately. So what I'm saying is, if you are reporting children as being runaways as opposed to children being reported missing, the FBI is going to get those statistics, and they're not going to give them the same, sense of urgency as if you're saying these children have been kidnapped. And that's a buzzword, right? Kidnapping is, of course, a state crime. And when I say kidnapping is, one of the highest level felonies you can commit. Mm-hmm. So, of course, when you say a child has been kidnapped, immediately alarm bells are going to go off. And the system will be activated, the Amber Alert, television, radio. But if you just say, well, this kid may have run away and they'll probably come back home. Well, as a parent, I can't go on probably. I can't go on your theory or your hunch. I need action, and I need action now. Because for every minute that we delay, if my child is in a van somewhere, a car somewhere, that child is now, a mile or 2 miles further away from coming back home. So we need to begin this whole alert system immediately.
Right.
And I want to add something else. For those of you who are listening, you need to go on and check out the Black and Missing website, because there's so much information there. You can donate to them. You can reach out to them. You can request one of them come and speak at a gathering. And it's so important that we support these two women, because, these women are doing God's work. So many of our children, are falling through the cracks within the system. And these women are saying enough is enough. It's our children. And we need to take the lead in finding our children and getting the information out there. So go on to the Missing in Black Foundation's website. You can just simply Google Black and Missing, and it'll come up, and you'll see all of the areas that these women are, involved in taking this fight to the media to get our children's faces onto the news, onto social media, and so many other platforms. And we got to stem this tide, because again, these are our children.
Right. And Ron, the thing I never received the answer about the Amber Alerts. How do they decide who to send Amber Alerts out for versus not? Because even in my situation, they never sent an Amber Alert. They said that they couldn't because of the paperwork. So how do we determine, or how do we get that answer of who gets sent to Amber Alert? Again, I rode down the street, we all ride down the highway and we see the Amber Alerts for kids, but not ours.
Right.
And how am I supposed to know whether, like if you're frantic, you're not going to think, okay, to say kidnapped, missing. You just know that your child is gone. So even you're right, as far as if they're kidnapped, they ran away or whatever, they're gone. So you're not thinking about the right word to say. I know I wasn't. And then it became like a conflict where, again, the daycare worker said one thing, I said something else. Not because they were not being honest. We know every second counts. And let's just be honest. When it comes to like New York and other states, and especially like Virginia, they're surrounded, it's water. So you're automatically thinking like, okay, what if my kid is being trafficked? They can be in another country in a matter of minutes. You're thinking that, so you just don't know. Or even like my uncle and I, we talked about it, he's in Washington State. And we were saying the other day, when kids get trafficked, they go up to Canada because he's right there. And you don't know.
I'll tell you something, right? It is all a matter of, I shouldn't say all a matter, but where you live plays a major role in the sort of police response you get.
Yes.
Now, I know growing up in Brooklyn, Bedford-Stuyvesant, people would call the police and they would wait, inordinately long, amounts of time to get an officer to respond. So what people would do is people would pick up the phone and say, well, there's a police officer that's been shot. And you would see police cars flying from every direction. Well, you shouldn't have to do that to get police response. If you are in Midtown Manhattan or on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, very affluent neighborhood, you call up police, I guarantee you, within 5 to 10 minutes, an officer's at your door.
Yes. Yes.
And you go up to Harlem, the South Bronx, or parts of Brooklyn, and it's just a very different story. You may wait half hour to an hour for a police officer to respond. It is the way things are prioritized. And unfortunately, for Black and brown children, low on the totem pole. And I shouldn't say Black and brown children, Black or brown people, period, are low on the totem pole. We're not prioritized the same way. So we don't have the same resources committed to our children, to our people, period. You know what I mean? You have to resort to drastic measures to get a police officer to respond. And, you know, when I say kidnapping, right? Yeah, that is a buzzword. And, you know, it's supposed to automatically initiate the system. You know, but what happens is, of course, the police will come and they will ask a series of questions. And one of them will invariably be, has there been a demand of ransom? And if you say no, well, they're automatically going to be, I guess they're going to begin to downgrade the priority. Questioning, is this actually a kidnapping? Well, in that time where we're asking these questions, someone could be out looking. An Amber Alert can go up. A BOLO can be broadcast. All of these things can be done while you're questioning me to get, you know, the details or the facts of what happened. You know, and again, if a child on the Upper East Side of Manhattan is missing, you know what? Perfect example. When I was in elementary school, a kid by the name of Eaton Pates went missing. And I can remember police were all over the city trying to find this little boy. You know, unfortunately, his body was recovered years later. But I remember when it happened, and, you know, the police department in the city of New York was very aggressive in trying to find this kid.
Mm-hmm.
If this kid were in Brownsville or the South Bronx, it would have been a whole different story. It would have been simply, well, this kid, you know, maybe they'll come back home. Maybe they just went to hang out with their friends. No, that's not like my child. My child, when they get out of school, they come home from school. My child just did not wander off. But, you know, it's that whole prioritizing game. And that's why, you know, we need organizations like the Black and Missing, because they're going to get the information out there when the police department may be hesitant to, for whatever reason. So that's why it's so important that we support, you know, these organizations that are trying to find our children. And, you know, as I mentioned before, it is so, I can't even describe the word, so painful when you consider the fact that it is Black men, you know, Black women, or maybe, as you said, some Black children who are trained by adults to go out, you know, and traffic their own people.
Right.
I mean, we haven't learned anything after, you know, 400 years of slavery in this country. We are still going out, capturing our people, and taking them to a slave master. And, you know, knowing this legacy of what happened to us over this 400-year period, how can we do it to ourselves again? And, you know, I guess people rationalize it because, you know, you've heard it said that, you know, how are you going to sell drugs to your own people? And it's like, well, if I don't do it, somebody else will. Well, let it be somebody else. Why does it have to be you? You know what I mean? And it all comes down to, you know, they say in the hood, getting money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, all money isn't good money. And if you're going to do this, I guess we never really stop to think of the destruction we're doing to our own people,
Right.
on a daily basis. You know what I mean? Somehow, I guess these guys who are doing this, trafficking these young women, are completely devoid of any emotion for their own people. They don't see the suffering. They don't, it's like they have no feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I guess, at least 400 years ago, at the beginning of the slave trade, the people who went and captured other tribes that they would typically at war with, they can justify it by saying, well, we didn't realize what was going to happen. We had no idea that they were going to transport the people we sold to them around the world, that we would sell you into 400 years of misery, of rape, of torture, of murder, of lynching. They had no concept. But today we know what's going on. There is no excuse for these guys to say, oh, well, I didn't know what they were doing with these girls. Yeah, you do know.
You know.
You do know. You're very much aware of what's happening here. And you're doing this for $1.
Right.
But, are you that desperate for money that you'd be willing to sell your own sister?
Right. But Ron,
your aunt?
As a segue to that, we have to get involved, right? If you see something, if you see an article or anything on social media, get involved, share it. Because one thing I know is that people will share. You're going to get $50,000 next week from God and all this other stuff. Nonsense. They will share that. But when it comes to situations like this, they don't share it. It's overlooked. So we have to get involved. You have to share this and keep sharing it. And then also when you share it, ask other people to share it. Because really, we have to police our own selves. We have to get more involved. Stop. And we talked about, you and I were talking about that the other day. If it's something nonsense to ratchet, we're quick to share it. It goes viral. But when it comes to information like this, even the ladies' website and what they're trying to do positive, it's overlooked.
Right.
We have to stop with the ignorance. Be involved. And you know how it is. You grew up in New York. I'm in Jersey. People can see you passed out. No one says anything. They can see something going on with children, women, whomever. They won't say anything. And then next thing you know, you're seen on the news or social media and they're saying, wait a minute, I wish I would have gotten involved. No, it's okay to be nosy because you're concerned. Share, share, and share.
And Renee, you're 100% right. You may have that one opportunity to do something, right? To save someone's life. And I know, growing up in New York, we were told, mind your business.
Yes.
See it, but don't see it. But you know what? You have to see it. Because that's somebody's child being taken off the subway, being lured off the subway, right? You see somebody in a department store, a grocery store, and you see somebody struggling, some young girl struggling with a guy. Do something.
Right.
Don't just sit there and pretend like, oh, well, somebody need to do something. You do something.
You do something.
And, because if it were your child, you would want somebody to get involved to save your child's life. But, we're sitting there and acting like we don't see it. Something in you has to say, this isn't right. There's got to be some humanity left in you to say, if I can do nothing else, I'll pick up my phone, I'll take a picture. I'll dial 911 and say, look, there's something going on. You don't even have to give your name. You could just say, look, I think there's a woman being assaulted. I think there's a child being abducted. That's all you have to do, and just give the location. You don't want to get involved, at least do that much.
Right. And one other thing too. So we're talking about, people, you're right, being abducted, out. But we also have to think that some of your kids, including mine, they're on these video game consoles and they're playing games with people they think in different states or even countries. And they think, okay, it's someone their age, but it may not be. It could actually be an adult. And it doesn't matter if your child is a little older or younger, because even with the younger ones, they pretend like they're Disney characters or whatever. And next thing you know, they're doing it to lure your child. So we have to be careful of that. And they're getting your IP addresses and, just different things. And again, make sure that you educate your child as well and be nosy, because a lot of times these kids are in the rooms or whatever, and you don't know what's going on. You're thinking, okay, they're talking to another child, but they're not. They're talking to an adult who's manipulating them. And next thing you know, they're some showing up at your house.
And you're right. We go home at night. We lock our windows. We lock our doors. We set our alarm systems. But you cannot you can't lock your door from the computer. You can't just close your window from the computer. So your child can be lured on the internet. And it happens repeatedly. I can remember when I was, because as you know, no, I was a police officer. Mm-hmm. And I remember plenty of days when I was in Midtown finding runaway kids. And this is before the internet craze. Literally thousands of runaway kids pass through the Port Authority bus terminal on a yearly basis. Mm-hmm. And simple, and it's so simple. On an airplane, you need a reservation. You need to buy a ticket. You need a reservation, right? Well, you can walk up to any Greyhound ticket window and purchase a ticket and get on the bus, no questions asked. And, so many people from around this country are lured to the bright lights of the city. But there's a dark side to that. Of these young people that came into the city, and got off the bus and walked out into Manhattan, how many of those children now are caught up into, sex trafficking? Mm-hmm. Or they got hooked on drugs? How many end up, will never make it back home? How many end up in jail? And, we're talking about teenagers who were just looking for some excitement. They thought things were so bad at home that they're going to take that money and get on a bus and come to New York, not knowing what to expect.
Right.
Everything, is just great in New York. Well, New York has a dark side, as we all well know. Those of us, who grew up in New York, who visited New York, there's a dark side there. A side you really don't want to find out about. But unfortunately, so many kids do on a yearly basis. This conversation is a conversation that needs to go on and on. It's something you need to have in your home with your children. You need to have it in church with church groups. You need to have it, start maybe a group on social media to talk about issues affecting sex trafficking, missing Black and brown children. This is something that, we need to keep going with. And we also, as I said earlier, we need to support the Black and Missing Foundation.
Yes.
If nothing else, check out their website, make a donation. Help these sisters in this fight against, and they're up against so much when the police aren't using or aren't dedicating enough resources. They're up against quite a bit. So help these sisters in this fight to protect our children, to bring our children home.
Yeah. So, and maybe there's someone out there who have resources too.
Right.
If you have the resources, bring it forward. You may know someone out there who has an organization or has some type of, neighborhood watch or whatever. Bring it forth, because it does take a village for things like this. So, hey, I think it's worth even mentioning it again and again, continuously mention it.
And you're right, and you hit the nail on the head when you said it takes a village to raise a child, and we've lost that village mentality. It's all about the individual now as opposed to the whole. And we've got to get back to our way of thinking. You know, I mean, we protected one another, we love one another, and now, you know, it's just the complete opposite. We don't trust one another, and clearly, we have a great deal of hatred and dislike for one another. But Renee, I thank you so much for coming on with me this morning. I know that you are extremely busy with all the things that you have been doing, you know, because, you know, we talk all the time, and I know that, you know, you have shows to produce. I mean, just on the way you told me that on Sundays you want to produce like 5 shows on a Sunday and all the work that goes into that. And then you have your other daily activities that you're working on, and also a single mother. So I know there is so much that, you know, that you're doing, and time is precious. So I thank you for coming on and sharing this time with us. And, you know, the hour goes by so fast.
I tell you.
But, you know, for you folks that are listening, you know, you really need to think about this, you know, because it may not be your child today, but it could be tomorrow.
Yes.
And, you know, you don't want to feel the pain and the anguish of a parent who has a bedroom that's empty, who lays awake every night wondering, where's my child? Are they still alive? So, folks, go on the Black and Missing Foundation's website, make a donation, help these sisters in this fight, because this is our fight. So, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
This Saturday morning. And remember to come back next Saturday, same time. Romane will be here, and she will be coming to you with the hot facts. And on a week after that, I guess that'll be around the 20th of August, we will be back. And I kind of gave you a kind of segue into what we're going to talk about. But like I said, I don't give away too much, but please join us on that show on the 20th, because we're going to be talking about some real serious issues, some stuff that's going on in the Black community that we really need to have a discussion about.
Yes.
You know, like our people are being taken advantage of, and it's by us.
Yes.
So come back and join us next week and week after that. And you know what? Tell your friends that Ron and Romane are on the air. So thank you, and have a blessed Saturday morning.
Thank you.